Good morning and welcome to the April DAC Monthly Webcast. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. We welcome you here today for our April broadcast, and this presentation is just a week later than we generally have it in April. We wanted to postpone it for a week so that each of you could enjoy your spring break. So hopefully you got to have some time away from the office. And if you're on spring break this week, we are hoping that you are enjoying your time now and watching this recording and not live. This morning we have several things to talk about. We have a full agenda, but before we get into the agenda, I wanted just to acknowledge what good things are happening already this spring. So we have started testing spring 2021 in almost all of our state assessments. We have access testing that has started in March, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of students that are testing, and we're seeing over 61% of students that we have expected to test are already testing. And that's just the online, and that doesn't include the paper, the students that are taking on paper. So we know that testing is going very well with access. The KScreen, the kindergarten screener, we also have students taking it. Almost 80% of kindergarten students who we expect to test and take the screener have done so. Alternate assessment, we know that it has started as well. The window's open, the materials have been shipped, and people are out there testing their students because we're getting questions. Even though it's a paper assessment, we're getting questions and know that people are testing. End of course, Cher is going to share information about end of course, but we're preparing for the third window. We've already had 2 previous windows, which have gone quite well. As far as K-Prep, we know that there is one district that has almost completed the K-Prep assessment. They're in their last 14 days, instructional days, and it's going quite well. We see that they're now into their social studies field test. And so we have lots of good activities happening already this spring as we continue to prepare for our upcoming spring assessments. I do want to also thank the districts. There were 111 districts that volunteered for the social studies field test. That is exciting to have that commitment from our district. So we really appreciate the fact that you are committing to future assessments and are willing to help with the analysis and be part of that field test. Based on the fact that we can now see the students in Infinite Campus who are in person and who are virtual and so forth, the data team that's led by Kevin Hill, John Wickheiser, and Mike Prater were able to do some analysis of the students that were in the 111 districts that volunteered, and based on the student population within those districts, there is a good representation of all of our student demographic groups. And so we felt like that the social studies field test could happen this spring, and that's all due to those districts. So we really do appreciate those districts for volunteering. And because we had that commitment from the districts, there were no additional schools or districts that had to be asked to be part of that social studies field test. So again, thanks to those districts and to those DACs and the students, the teachers, the administrators in those schools that volunteered to be part of that. So lots of good things that are happening already this spring. And Helen, if you would please bring up the agenda. We'll note that also the ACT is happening. The ACT, the third window, the emergency window, was started this past Tuesday, and so it's going well also. So lots of good things happening this spring. As far as our agenda today, we wanted to bring you some updates and some friendly reminders about end-of-course assessments. Shara Savage is here to bring those, as well as some important information about Spring 21 ACT assessments, because as I mentioned, we started the emergency window this past Tuesday, and we have one more to go in May. So she's got some important updates and some timelines and some deadlines to share with you. For KScreen, we are finishing out this year for the kindergarten screener and preparing for next year. So Ben Riley is here to bring us some important updates on that. I'll finish out the presentation with the ESSA state waiver. And as always, if you have questions, please email dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Pam Powers is monitoring that email inbox and will be with us to ask any of your questions, and hopefully we'll have the answers for you. So at this time, I will turn it over to Shara to provide us some important reminders about end of course. So Shara.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. I do have some reminders for the end of course, the EOC exams, new for this 2021 school year, the electronic answer document. In window 2, we had some issues with students not submitting the exam answers through the electronic answer document. The students used the paper test booklet as the answer sheet. Students should not be using the electronic answer document. Students should be using the electronic answer document. If they don't, this will delay their scores. This could be problematic for students who want to graduate if they don't use the electronic answer document. So in order to avoid delays, I have some reminders for you to assist you with this. So with each testing window, an email is sent to the DAC who requests the assessments. Included in the email are the electronic test administration manual, the TAM, the EOC assessment electronic answer document, the EOC guidance document, and all related training materials. So now let's talk about what to do with this information that I send. First and foremost, the most important thing is please ensure that all information in the email is forwarded to your BAC. Once the test coordinator has reviewed the TAM and all the related training, please load the electronic answer document on the testing device prior to students' arrival. Once the student is admitted to the testing room, scripts and directions have been read, and the student is ready to begin the exam. The student is to open the EOC electronic answer document. Once the answer document is open, please instruct the students to select a link. So, for example, if they're taking History Part 1, you would have the students select that link. Now, guide the students to scroll down to the bottom of Section 1 and select Next to move to Section 2 of the answer document. Here is where students will enter their district name, school name, state student identification number, exam date, test proctor, and room number. It is vitally important that students enter the correct name and full SSID number. So their full name and how they spell it and their full SSID number. At this time, the test coordinator would instruct the students to click the back button on the form to return to the form's answer portion. Once all the test booklets have been distributed and the scripts are read, the student can begin the assessment. When students have finished the assessment, students will select the Next button to return to the Section 2 of the answer document. Students will scroll down to the bottom of the page and select the Submit button to submit their answers. Once the answers are submitted, the students cannot go back to any portion of those questions. Students will follow the same procedure for U.S. History Part 2, if that's what they're taking, as it is a separate form with a different link in the electronic answer document. As a reminder, it is vitally important that students enter their correct name, first and last, and their student SSID number. The name and the SSID number must match parts 1 and 2 in order to generate an overall score for the student. Okay, moving on to the next slide. On this slide, there are links to the EOC Back to School training, the electronic answer document training, and the EOC guidance document. Please ensure testing staff have reviewed all the related training for a successful testing window. That's really important to get that email forwarded to your back, and that all training in the TAM has been reviewed. Okay, moving to the next slide. Here is the contact information for the EOC assessments for the early graduation pathway program related questions. Please contact Dr. Sweeney. And then for EOC assessment related questions, please contact me at shara.savage@education.ky.gov or by phone at 502-564-4394. So I will pause there, and Pam, do I have any questions related to the EOC assessments?
No, we don't have any questions yet on the EOC.
Okay, great.
We have had a couple come in about social studies, if Jennifer wants those, or we can hold those to the end.
Pam, why don't we hold those till the end?
Okay.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Great. Okay, so now let's switch gears and let's talk briefly on the ACT. The ACT is used for many purposes, including college admissions and scholarship opportunities. To ensure students have the opportunity to take the state administration of the ACT this spring, and to offer as much flexibility as possible due to COVID-19 restrictions, KDE has partnered with ACT to provide an additional standard time test date and a corresponding accommodations window for the state-funded ACT exam during the spring 2021 administration cycle. Okay, so moving to slide 9. Schools and district staff may choose to use the additional date as another chance for students to take a state-administered ACT exam. There is no requirement that the additional emergency date must be used. The additional state spring 2021 ACT emergency testing window 2, this is an overall testing window of 4, includes the standard paper date of May 5th. That is a Wednesday. That is correct. They're offering a Wednesday date to help with those hybrid models. Then there's the accommodations window, May 5th through the 7th and 10th through the 11th. And the May date is a paper only. There's no online window associated with this May 5th date. Okay, now moving on to slide 10. The ordering window for the May testing date is April 20th through the 22nd. So that's coming up on us pretty quickly here. The testing materials will arrive the week of April 26th. So we're going to order April 20th through the 22nd, and then your materials will arrive the week of April 26th. After testing has concluded and the material pickup date is scheduled for May 6th, the accommodations materials are scheduled to be picked up on May the 12th. All answer documents must be received by May the 12th for standardized testing, and May the 18th for accommodations in order for those to be scored. If schools or district decide to utilize the May test date option, please contact me for approval and to talk through the logistics of it all. Okay, moving to slide 11. As we have announced before, OAA and ACT continue to partner and offer DACs and testing staff open office hours. We encourage DACs, BACs, test coordinators to come and join us, and they will be able to ask questions and receive assistance during this time. And here is a list of links to the meetings. We will be offering support to the districts through the office hours through May 7th. If you have any questions for ACT, please join us this afternoon. So this wraps up the ACT updates. I'll pause here and ask Pam if we have any questions at this time.
No, Shara, there are no questions at this point.
Great. Okay. So at this point, thank you for your time, and I will now turn things over to Ben Riley for KScreen Updates.
Well, thank you, Shara, and hello, everyone. Today, I just wanted to give everyone a quick reminder on our ordering window and then talk about a resource that is now available to you guys. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. I wanted to remind all of our DACs and our KScreen coordinators and districts that the KScreen ordering window is closing tomorrow, April 16th. We've had it open since March 1st. Just like last year, the ordering process has been done through Curriculum Associates for those who haven't done it yet. And to complete that process, just go to the Kentucky Brigance site, download that Excel spreadsheet on that webpage, complete it, and then email it to Curriculum Associates. And they will usually respond with a confirmation email in about 24 hours. There's also in this PowerPoint presentation and on our Common Case Screener entry webpage directions for completing this and an instructional video where I go through and show you how to fill out the spreadsheet and complete the prompts in that spreadsheet to ensure you have an accurate order for your district. The other thing is our refresh webcast is available from March 19th, and it is available on our KDE media portal as well. And for those who need ELA credit from watching that presentation, at the end of the video, there is a small bit.ly link given out where you can complete a quick Google form, and within 2 weeks, we'll email that ELA certificate to you all. And this training, too, is something that all experienced district KScreen trainers need to complete. So I'm going to go ahead now, and that's all I have for today, but I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Stafford to give us an update on ESSA and the state waiver.
Thanks, Ben. Pam, does Ben have any questions about the KScreen?
Nothing's come in yet, but remember, it's a slight delay for our viewers. So we could get one, and if we do, I'll ask it at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And I'll
Thanks,
be on.
Ben. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Ben, and thank you, Shara. Our next topic and our final topic is the ESSA state waiver. And we've had a couple of mentions of the state waiver on previous DAC monthly webcasts, but we haven't had the opportunity to go into some detail about the state waiver. So Helen, if you'll move to the next slide. The U.S. Department of Education offered a template to states to apply for waivers from federal accountability as well as school identification and a few reporting requirements. So what we wanted to take the opportunity to do here is to talk about what is in the waiver and what's not in the waiver, because what's in the waiver, we feel very confident that the department will provide and accept our waiver application. We feel that they wouldn't have offered waivers from those components if they were not planning to approve those waivers. So the waiver template was offered, and it was a very easy template to complete. It had check boxes as well as some narrative pieces of that. They did offer waivers from the federal accountability. So what that means is from the identification of any new targeted, assisted, or comprehensive school and improvement schools, targeted support and improvement schools, and additional targeted and support and improvement schools. So we do not have to provide any new schools, but the waiver maintains that those schools that were previously identified continue to get supported. And so those schools that were identified previously as CSI, TSI, or ATSI will continue to get supported. The waiver also includes being able to not identify school ratings or those type of things. And when we mean school ratings in Kentucky, that means previously our star ratings, like from 1 to 5 stars. And in the new accountability system, which the regulation is going through the regulatory process now, that would mean any rating of colors, whether it's a red, a yellow, an orange, blue, or green. So those school identifications of those ratings. There are also some reporting requirements that are waived as well in that template. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those reporting requirements that are and are not as part of the waiver. Now, the public comment period on the waiver was held March 29th through April 2nd, and we thank our district assessment coordinators who submitted comments. We appreciate those. As you can imagine, all of the comments we received were in support of the waiver, so we appreciate those. So when we were able to submit the waiver to the U.S. Department of Education, we were able to say that we had a very favorable reaction from the field on the waiver. You can see the full waiver online at KDE's website. The link is provided here on slide 14. And Helen, if you'll move to the next slide, we'll go into some details about the accountability components that are included in the waiver. So we tried to be very specific here on what we feel like is in the waiver and we will get approved from. So that is includes the progress toward our long-term goals and measures of interim progress. So previously we have created those academic as well as EL progress goals for closing the achievement gaps, and those have been shared, they've been made public, and part of the waiver includes having to update the progress toward those long-term goals and those measures of interim progress. So those will not be publicly reported based on the 2021 data. And again, that's pending the approval of the waiver. That meaningful differentiation of public schools, that is that rating system. So waiver from this part of the accountability system would mean that we would not have to do those stars or the color coding to be able to annually meaningfully differentiate. Also, that means the participation rate below 95 in those accountability measures we feel will be waived as well. It also means that identifies those schools for comprehensive, targeted, and additional targeted support based on this year's spring data. So again, that expectation from the U.S. Department of Education would be that those schools that were previously identified will continue to be supported by our support staff. So those are part of the waiver template that is included in the accountability components. So Helen, if you'll go to the next slide. The reporting components that are included in the waiver include the accountability system description. And that is a document that Pam Powers actually has a very good start on and is included in our website, and the links to that accountability description is included in the school report card. That does not have to be updated this year, the description of the accountability system, because there's not going to be reporting on those accountability pieces and those accountability measures. So those things that we have previously had, like proficiency, separate academic indicator, the quality of school climate and safety indicator, those pieces don't have to be reported publicly or developed. So the description of that system doesn't have to be publicly released. Those accountability indicators that I just mentioned, that's also part of the waiver. None of those accountability indicators will be calculated or reported publicly because that's part of the waiver. And again, that's assuming that we're going to be accepted of that. And then again, those progress toward long-term goals and measures of interim progress does not have to be reported publicly. So next slide, Helen, please. So this is reporting components not included in the waiver. So these are reporting pieces that we feel like that we will have to make public. Okay, so I want to be very clear that these components are not part of the waiver and therefore will have to be made public. And that does include those schools identified for CSI and TSI. So again, those schools that were previously identified based on 1819 data, those students will, or those schools will be, again, publicly released as such with a federal classification. Information on student achievement on academic assessments. So those pieces on that the students are taking right now, those assessments. So those pieces on student achievement on those assessments that we're taking this spring will have to be publicly reported. Again, it's not part of the waiver request. High school graduation rates, including the 4-year adjusted cohorts, is not part of the waiver request. So those graduation rates will have to be calculated and made public. Now, there is a good bit of discussion on Senate Bill 128 and how it impacts the graduation rate. And currently we are working with our legal office on some ways that we can possibly look at how the graduation rate impacts the overall accountability moving forward into when we are required to report publicly accountability. So again, that graduation rate is not part of the waiver and will have to be publicly reported. Performance on English learners and their progress and performance on the English language proficiency exam. That's our access and alternate access. And again, we've got a good percentage of our students who have taken that assessment already. Those performance results will have to be maintained on our school report card. A percentage of students assessed and not assessed. will have to be publicly reported. That will include all students as well as disaggregated by student demographic group. So you can imagine that part of the public reporting will be percentages, numbers of students that are able to take the exam and those that are not able to take the exams. So that will be publicly reported, as well as other measures that's not directly tied to accountability, that are other requirements of the school report card that from the federal level. So Helen, if you'll move to the next slide, please. I will mention before we go to our question and answers that the waiver has been submitted to the U.S. Department of Education, and we are awaiting then their formal response to that template. The next thing that will come out publicly as far as the U.S. Department of Education in any formal document is the ESSA state plan. The ESSA state plan is not directly related to what is happening because of the waiver, but what we will see is updates to the ESSA state plan due to the impact of Senate Bill 158 from the 2020 general session. And as you know, we've got regulations right now that are moving through the process to update our regs and will impact the state plan. So lots of different moving pieces are going forward, but the next thing that you will see publicly is the ESSA state plan and the updates on the future accountability system as a result of the changes again in Senate Bill 158. So a couple of different moving parts there. So Pam, let me pause at that point, and I know that you have questions on social studies, and you may have received a couple more questions.
We have questions on social studies and questions on the waiver. Which one would you like to start with?
Let's start with social studies. They've been waiting longer.
Okay. When completing a work request in PAN for K-Prep, is it also necessary to complete a work request for the student for the social studies field test if in grades 5, 8, or 11?
So you have to help me with a work request, but I will say that they do have to do all of the information and processes in PAN for the social studies field test that they do for K-Prep. Creating test sessions, assigning accommodations, all that kind of thing, putting the students on those rosters, printing tickets, all of those natural pieces that are aligned with online testing is expected with the social studies field test. So if that answers the question, I'm not 100% sure what the work request.
Well, I think that's where one of the student has changed districts or schools, changed to another school in another district. So I think they're asking if they need to do that work request twice. And we will check into that and get back with you. You shouldn't have to do it twice. Okay, another question on social studies. Will only in-person students be expected to take the social studies field test? Or will we be expected to reach out to 100% virtual students as well?
So that's a good question. The students that are in person are expected to take that because we're really depending on those students to take that to make a successful field test. So those in-person students, absolutely, we are expecting that. The virtual students, if you have the opportunity to test your virtual students, if they're there, if they have the opportunity to do so, they are more than welcome to take part in the field test.
Let's move on to the waiver questions. What is the timeline for knowing if the accountability waiver is approved by USED? So do we have any time frames?
You hope that the U.S. Department of Education moves quickly, but oftentimes they don't. They move on their own time frame. I would expect that it would be a fairly short turnaround because they created the template. They are offering a waiver from those components. And so if I don't think that they would offer a waiver and then say, oh no, we were just kidding. We're not really going to give that. So I think that because we completed the template, we provided all the required components of the waiver. I think it should be a fairly short turnaround, but one never knows. But what we will assure you that once we have the approval, it will make it known and you will be the first to know.
Okay. All right. Will DACs need to verify student accountability this year since there is no accountability? I think they're referring to the 100-day students because their second question is asking about will they see the accountability in SDRR?
You will see the 100-day accountability in SDRR. So we are asking for that 100-day accountability. And the reason being is that first, we don't know if we're going to get the waiver approved. And then second is the fact that we do analysis on the 100 days. So as we are developing the accountability systems and we're looking through the impact of bills and regulations and components of the future accountability system, we really use those 100-day classifications for analysis. I mentioned earlier that the data team, Kevin, John, and Mike, they do a lot of analysis and they really do look at those 100 days and how students within the schools and how schools are impacted as decisions are being made on future accountability. So yes, the 100-day accountability is in the SDRR, and we're asking for that to be completed.
Okay. So what exactly is the information on student achievement on academic assessments look like for public reporting, or do we know?
So we don't know 100% exactly what will be reported this year. We're working through with our vendor, Bright Bites. They're the school report card vendor, and coming to an understanding of what is expected in the school report card this year, how it's going to be presented, what exactly is presented is at this point unknown. We're working through with our psychometricians as well, because as I've shared previously on Webcast is that there is good information and there's bad information. There's good data and there's ways to misinterpret or misuse data. And one thing that we want to be very cautious about is information that we put into the school report card because the comparisons can be very different. Specifically, when we are talking about, and I mentioned earlier this morning that we've had 80% of our kindergarten students that we expected to test this year. So if we just look at that one assessment system as an example, we've got about 80%. We don't know that there'll be much more than that. But when you take 80% of a population and try to look at previous data that has been released, and there's 100% population tested. So those comparisons are need to be looked at, and the information that is presented needs to be presented in context and with some cautions, maybe some directions on how to utilize that data. we want to take our time with the decisions and how to present our data in an extreme caution, because we don't want the data to be misused or misinterpreted. So that's one example. The other example is comparing schools that have different populations testing this year. So my KScreen example was the different populations from prior year to current year. But we also have different populations in schools that are testing this year. So let me give you another example. So I'll stay with KScreen. Our one elementary school may have a population that 50% of their students were tested with the kindergarten screen. Another elementary school may have 90 to 100% of their students test within this year. So if you take two schools within the same year with different populations of students testing, there could be misinterpretations on that data as well. So we've got the situation where we've got to be very meticulous in what we present, how we present it, in the context in which we present the information. So Pam, that was a long answer to a very short question.
We have lots, it was a good answer, but we have lots of questions coming in as well. Let's see, your next one would be, will you be percentage of students scored at each performance? They're referencing the second bullet on slide 17.
So Pam, you cut out there just a little bit. I think the question was, will we be presenting the performance at novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished levels? Yes, that answer is yes, that is expected. Now, we will follow all student protections and FERPA guidelines in order to be able to publicly present the information. If the N count gets too small for a specific demographic group, then that information is suppressed. But performance data on students who are tested is expected.
Okay, so what about the 95% participation rate for K-Prep? Has that been waived, or the percentage changed in light of COVID from 95%?
Right, so that, again, the 95% participation rate is part of the waiver. So Helen, thank you. On slide 15, you'll see that participation rate below 95% is part of the template, and we have checked that box for inclusion in the waiver. So Kentucky is desiring to be relieved from that 95% participation rate. And again, we do feel like that we will receive that waiver.
Okay. Will the K-Prep scores be posted in Infinite Campus this year?
So those, the K-Prep scores are generally released in August through the PAN first, then we make them public, and then they are then uploaded into Infinite Campus. So that is a process that is in place, and I don't anticipate that changing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we have a follow-up question. Do you suspect that the percent of novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished students will be publicly reported?
Yes, I do. And again, that, Helen, if you'll bring up, I want to say that's slide 17. The performance data is on that slide that's not included in the waiver. So performance data is in that that's not included. So yep, slide 17 It is the second bullet, information on student academic and assessments, and then the performance of students. Yes, so that's not included in the waiver. So we do anticipate that information on student performance will be made public.
Okay. I think that runs out of our waiver questions. I have coming about your social studies field test. Students who are on virtual that come in to take their exams, are we able to, if we are able to get them to come in, is it okay for us to allow them to take the social studies field test after they complete the other required testing?
Absolutely, absolutely. If they are able to take the social studies field test, it should be the last assessment given. And so if you have the opportunity to test your virtual students, please do so.
And we have a couple of access questions. With the extension of the access testing window, what is the new deadline for access and SDRR?
I don't have that information right at my fingertips. Let me, while we're talking here, let me reach out to Chris Williams and see if she has that information. And it looks like Shara is on camera, so we may have some ACT questions upcoming.
Yes, we do.
All right. So let me see if I can't find that information, and while you're doing that, and then I'll be back.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Morning, Shara.
Good morning, Pam. So what do you have?
Okay, let's start with your ACT questions.
Okay.
If a 10th grader moves to an 11th grader during the emergency ACT window, do we have to test them? If so, how do we get accommodations approved?
So, I mean, you can test them because they would be an 11th, if they're an 11th grader assigned NIC. The accommodations, join us for the ACT office hour this afternoon, and ACT will be able to assist you on that, on the accommodations questions.
Okay, and when will we receive ACT results for accommodated students?
ACT asks that we allow the full 8 weeks to elapse for those results to be in the success site. Okay,
and we have one EOC question.
Okay.
When can we expect the email from Shara regarding EOC information?
Okay, so if you had ordered the assessments for test window 3, that email has already been sent out. So if you haven't received it and you have testing materials in your office, then give me an email and let me know who needs it, and I'll get you that information.
And that's all the ACT and EOC questions I have.
Great, thank you.
We have had another question come in on the spring manuals. Those are available on the Kentucky portal. If you don't know what that address is, if you open up your DAC email from Monday, any of them, and look on that right-hand side, keep going down, you will find a link to the Kentucky portal. You'll also find a link to PAN. But if you go to the Kentucky portal, you will find that under resources. And as we wait for Jennifer, I think we have answered all of our questions that have come in. So we may not have an access. Do we have an access answer yet?
Not yet, Pam. So I have not been able to locate that information, but we'll make sure that it gets posted and people know of the updated timeframes.
Jennifer, you may want to check your email real quick if you're able to. I think I sent it to you. I wasn't able to put it into the link. So
Okay. Do you have it, Helen? Do you?
I will see if I can pull it up real quick, okay?
And here's a more general one for K-Prep that has come in. Is there a way for translators for the oral native language to have prior access to the K-Prep test in order to check for a working translation?
So Pam, is that one to me?
Though Joy may have the answer right on their tongue. Okay, while we're getting the answer to that, we have another social studies question that's popped in. Due to busing issues of virtual students to school and running our regular routes, we have some students willing to come in to test. However, we do not have enough time to give the social studies field test to everyone. Is it required?
So ask that again, if you would.
Okay, due to the busing issues of virtual students
Okay.
to school and running our regular routes, we have some students willing to come in to test. I would assume those are virtual students.
Okay.
However, we do not have enough time to give the social studies field test to all or to everyone. Is it required that we give the social studies field test? I'm assuming they're asking for the virtual students.
Yes. So that's similar to the question earlier. So the social studies field test, if you are able to administer it to virtual students, then you certainly may. It's not required for your virtual students. And again, that's for those districts who have volunteered to be part of that. So we really appreciate everyone's willingness to volunteer, and we certainly don't want to put your students into a compromised position. And so therefore, if you're able to and can include your virtual students, as many as you can, absolutely do so, but it's not required. So again, we're just appreciative of the fact that you have volunteered and are willing to be part of the administration of the field test. Okay, so let's move on from the access, and we'll have to give.
It's in the window. I don't know if you can see it in the chat, Jennifer.
Okay. Is this, Helen, is this public information? Okay, so what we've got is information on what has been included as far as when the district receives their materials and the review of materials order, pre-testing and during testing. That is not specific to SDRR. So let us follow up in a Monday DAC email with information on access rosters within SDRR.
And the questions that have come in today.
All right. Well, that's we hope that you are doing well. You're staying safe. You're staying healthy. We do want to note that the May DAC Monthly Webcast is canceled. It is scheduled for the highest testing week of across the state, and we want to give you all the time to focus on the activities in your schools and districts. So we have canceled the May DAC Monthly Webcast. The next webcast will be in June, scheduled again on the second Thursday, June 10th. So we wish you the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and best of luck during your spring 2021 state required assessment. Thank you.